Security. Get this kid out of actuality before he contaminates something. Dr. Harrison's acute articulation echoed through the alley of Chicago Memorial Hospital as he acicular to the 10-year-old boy who had aloof absolved through the advanced door. Jerome Williams chock-full in the average of the marble lobby, his beat sneakers allegory acutely with the agleam floor. He had absolved 12 blocks in the freezing November rain to get there, but it wasn't the algid that fabricated his Duke shake. It was the coercion of affiance he had fabricated to his own conscience. "Please, sir," Jerome said, his articulation calm, hasty everyone. "I aloof appetite to advice the babe in the wheelchair. I apperceive how to accomplish her walk." Dr. Harrison, arch of the Pediatric Neurology Administration and beneficiary to a medical absolutism that went aback 4 generations, looked at the boy as if he were a stain on his bright lab coat. "Didn't you apprehend me? I alleged security. Artery kids don't appear in actuality and acquaint doctors how to do their jobs." At 45, Dr. Harrison had congenital his acceptability alleviative alone the accouchement of Chicago's elite. His specialty was cogent affluent parents, actually what they capital to hear. Like aback there was no achievement left, abnormally aback it came to the babe of the able Dr. Michael Foster, arch surgeon and the hospital's bigger donor. "The babe has been in concrete analysis for 3 years and has never taken a step," Jerome continued, blank the abutting Aegis guards. "But I can help. My grandmother accomplished me." Dr. Foster appeared in the alley at that moment, blamed the wheelchair of his 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The girl, built in with bookish palsy, watched aggregate with wide, analytical eyes. Aback she saw Jerome, article baffling happened. She smiled and connected her little accoutrements to join him. "Emma, no," Dr. Foster whispered, affairs the armchair back. "Let's go to the session." But Emma acicular at Jerome and said her aboriginal bright chat in 2 years. "Friend." The blackout that followed was deafening. Dr. Harrison acquainted a ache of affliction at the girl's reaction. In the 3 years he had been alleviative Emma, she had never apparent any absorption in anyone or any treatment. Jerome knelt bottomward to the akin of the wheelchair, his eyes affair Emma's. "Hi, princess. Do you appetite to apprentice how to dance?" "Enough," exploded Dr. Harrison. "Security, abolish this boy immediately. And you," he acicular at Jerome. "If you appearance your face actuality again, I'll alarm the police." Jerome stood up slowly, but afore he was escorted out, he aside article that fabricated Dr. Harrison's claret run cold. "Doctor, I apperceive actually why Emma never got better, and I apperceive you know too." As the Aegis guards led him to the exit, Jerome kept his boring anchored on Dr. Harrison. There was article in those eyes that didn't accord to a 10-year-old boy. An age-old wisdom and bent determination, and alike added disturbing, the quiet aplomb of addition who holds secrets too able to be appear at the amiss time. If you're adequate this adventure of adventuresomeness and determination, don't balloon to subscribe to the approach to acquisition out how a simple moment of abasement would become the agitator for an anarchy that would consistently change the lives of anybody in that hospital. 3 canicule had anesthetized aback Jerome had been escorted out of Memorial Hospital, but Dr. Harrison couldn't get those words out of his head. "I apperceive actually why Emma never got better, and I apperceive you do too. What the hell did that kid beggarly by that?" Harrison approved to argue himself that it was aloof the ravings of a abashed child, but article in the authoritativeness of those eyes agitated him deeply. On Thursday morning, he accustomed at the hospital and activate Jerome sitting on the accomplish of the Capitol entrance, as if he were waiting. The boy fabricated no attack to enter. He aloof watched the comingings and goings through the bottle doors with the patience that belied his age. "Haven't you alleged the badge yet?" Harrison asked acutely of the Aegis bouncer at the advanced desk. "He's not causing any trouble, doctor." He aloof sits there. "Technically, the sidewalk is accessible property." Harrison acquainted an ache of irritation. This boy was acutely aggravating to abet him, and it was working. During Emma's concrete analysis affair that morning, article aberrant happened. The girl, who was commonly blah and uninterested, kept attractive adjoin the window. Aback Dr. Harrison followed her gaze. He saw Jerome outside, watching through the glass. Emma began to fidget in her chair, aggravating to acquaint through gestures. It was the aboriginal time in months that she had apparent any affectionate of coercion or desire. "What's activity on with her today?" asked Dr. Foster, acquainted the change in his daughter's behavior. "Aloof a phase," Harrison replied dryly, closing the curtains on the window. "Maybe we should acclimatize her medication." But Emma didn't calm down. On the contrary, she began to cry. Absolute tears of annoyance that Harrison hadn't apparent in years. It was as if she was badly aggravating to a quaint article that no one could understand. That afternoon, Harrison apparent Jerome talking to Janet, one of the hospital's best chief nurses, in the parking lot. The arena angered him. Janet, you were instructed not to collaborate with this child. I'm sorry, Dr. Harrison, but he was cogent me about techniques his grandmother acclimated with adapted children. It's fascinating, actually. Fascinating, Harrison about shouted. He's a benighted adolescent who lives on the street. Jerome angry calmly to Harrison. Doctor, my grandmother was Lily Williams. She formed at this hospital for 30 years in the pediatric neurology department. Perhaps you bethink her. Harrison's claret ran cold. He remembered Lily Williams' actual well. One of the best admired nurses who at any time formed there, accepted for accepting amazing aftereffects with cases advised impossible. She had retired 15 years ago and had a fresh anesthetized away. That's not possible, Harrison stammered. She aloft me afterwards my parents died. Jerome continued, his articulation advancement the advancing calm. She accomplished me aggregate about how children's accuracy work, how to affix with them a back adults accord up. She accomplished me abnormally about cases like Emma's. Janet looked amid the two men, activity the restriction in the air. Dr. Harrison, if he actually is Lily's grandson. Enough, Harrison exploded. I don't affliction who he claims to be. Accouchement do not amusement patients in this hospital. Jerome took a footfall advanced, and for the aboriginal time, Harrison saw. Article added than calm in those eyes. He saw assurance that fabricated him involuntarily footfall back. Dr. Harrison, I apperceive you're lying to Dr. Foster about Emma's progress. I apperceive you apperceive actually what's amiss with her, but you're ambuscade it because you don't appetite to acquire you misdiagnosed her 3 years ago. The apple chock-full about Harrison. How could this kid apperceive about the misdiagnosis he had fabricated and hidden all these years? You don't apperceive anything, Harrison whispered. But his articulation was shaking. I apperceive Emma doesn't acquire a stringent bookish attached like you told her father, Jerome continued, unrelenting. I apperceive she has a treatable activity that you misdiagnosed, and now you're abashed to actual because it would ruin your reputation. Harrison acquainted algid diaphoresis crawl bottomward his back. That misdiagnosis had apparitional his nights for years. He had been young, arrogant, too acquisitive to affect Dr. Foster with his expertise. By the time he accomplished his mistake, it was too late. Correcting it would beggarly acceptance amateurishness, and possibly adverse a medical abuse lawsuit. How do you, Harrison began, but Jerome wasn't finished, and I apperceive how to advise her. My grandmother accomplished me actually how to amusement cases like this. But you'd rather accumulate an innocent adolescent affliction than acquire you fabricated a mistake. Janet watched the arena in shock. She had never apparent Dr. Harrison so anemic and out of control. If you don't get out of actuality adapted now, I'll alarm the police, Harrison threatened. But his articulation no best had the ascendancy it already had. Jerome smiled, a smile that didn't clothing a 10-year-old boy burdened with aching acumen and abiding determination. You can alarm them, doctor, but accustomed I'll be actuality reminding you that there's a babe in there who could be active and arena if you had the adventuresomeness to do the adapted thing. As Jerome calmly absolved away, Harrison stood still, activity his anxiously complete apple activate to crumble. This boy knew too much. Knew secrets that could abort his career. What Dr. Harrison didn't apprehend, yet was that Jerome wasn't there by chance. And his ability of Emma's case was aloof the tip of an abstract that was about to appear from the icy amnion of truth, accustomed with it revelations that would transform that hospital forever. Dr. Harrison was bent to end this botheration already and for all. The abutting morning, he alleged an emergency affair with the absolute pediatric neurology team. Colleagues, we acquire a aerial situation, he announced, adjusting his glasses and bold his best authentic posture. An unaccompanied adolescent has been abolition are accepted and alike attempting to baffle with accommodating treatment. We charge to booty action. Dr. Rebecca Chun, a neurologist who had a fresh accustomed from Boston, frowned. What affectionate of interference. The boy claims to acquire medical ability affiliated from a declared grandmother who formed here. It's acutely a case of adolescence fantasy, but it's causing disturbances. Janet, the assistant who had announced with Jerome, austere her throat uncomfortably. Dr. Harrison, I arrested the records. Lily Williams did actually assignment actuality for 30 years, and she had a grandson who was a fresh orphaned. The blackout in the allowance was awkward. Harrison acquainted diaphoresis activate to anatomy on his forehead. That doesn't change the actuality that an adolescent can't. Excuse me, Dr. Chin interrupted. May I ask what affectionate of ability this boy has demonstrated? Harrison hesitated. He couldn't acquire that Jerome had articular his misdiagnosis, afterwards actually advertisement himself. Unscientific techniques, bottomless theories. I'd like to allocution to him, Dr. Chin said decisively. If he actually is Lily Williams' grandson, that changes everything. She was a fable here. That afternoon, Jerome was at his accepted Adam on the accomplished aback Dr. Chin approached him. Unlike Harrison, she sat bottomward abutting to him, alleviative him as an equal. You charge me, Jerome. I'm Dr. Chin. I've heard about your grandmother. Jerome advised her carefully. Did you assignment with her? Not directly, but anybody knew her reputation. She adored abounding accouchement that added doctors had accustomed up on. She accomplished me that sometimes doctors get so bent up in their books that they balloon to attending at the absolute child. Jerome replied, his ability again, hasty and adult. Dr. Chin smiled. Your grandmother was wise. Acquaint me about Emma Foster. Jerome looked her beeline in the eye. Do you actually appetite to apperceive, or are you testing me to see if I apperceive anything? The bluntness of the catechism bent Dr. Chin off guard. I actually appetite to know. Emma doesn't acquire astringent bookish attached, as her blueprint says. She has a neuromot break affection that can be advised with specific stimulation. My grandmother accomplished me to admit the signs. Dr. Chun acquainted a chill. If Jerome was right, it meant that Emma had spent 3 years accepting bare treatment. How can you be so sure? Because I saw the aforementioned affection in my accessory afore my grandmother helped her. And because I've been watching Emma for weeks through that window, she responds to stimuli that an adolescent with astringent bookish attached would not acknowledge to. At that moment, Dr. Harrison appeared at the hospital access and saw the two talking. His announcement angry to authentic fury. Dr. Chun, what are you doing? Talking to an actual acute adolescent man, she replied, continuing up. Jerome, I'd like you to accommodate Dr. Foster. I anticipate he should apprehend your observations about Emma. Harrison's claret ran cold. If Jerome battened to Dr. Foster about the misdiagnosis, his career would be over. This is actually unacceptable. Harrison exploded. Dr. Chun, your acceptance of artery kid to catechism are medical protocols. A adolescent who demonstrates aberrant medical ability affiliated from one of the best professionals this hospital has any time had, Dr. Chun replied firmly. Jerome stood up slowly, watching the activating amid the two doctors. There was article in Harrison's restriction that accepted his suspicions. Dr. Harrison, Jerome said with that advancing calm. You're abashed of what I'm activity to acquaint Dr. Foster, aren't you? I'm not abashed of annihilation an adolescent can say. Then why don't you let me appearance him what I apperceive about Emma? If I'm wrong, you can bang me out of actuality for good. Dr. Chun looked amid Jerome and Harrison. Analysis of restriction that went far above a simple altercation over protocol. Harrison, what's the problem? If the boy is wrong, it will alone affirm our methods. Harrison was cornered. Refusing now would accession suspicion, but accordant could betrayal his. Adverse mistake. All right, he said, aggravating to accumulate his articulation steady. But aback this bamboozlement is exposed, I appetite activity taken. Jerome smiled, a smile that didn't accord on a 10-year-old boy. Perfect, Dr. Harrison. I anticipate your activity to be actual afraid by what we discover. As they absolved to join the hospital, Dr. Chin aside to Jerome. Are you abiding you apperceive what you're doing? My grandmother consistently said that the accuracy has a way of a ward out, Jerome replied. And that a back addition tries to adumbrate it for too long, it finds a way out. What Dr. Harrison didn't apperceive was that Jerome had spent the aftermost 2 weeks accomplishing abundant added than aloof watching Emma through the window. He had talked to longtime nurses, anxiously advised advance reports, and best importantly, he had anxiously acclaimed every aberration in the girl's treatment. His notebook, tucked abroad in a beat backpack, independent advice that would not alone prove his analysis correct, but additionally acknowledged the admeasurement of the bamboozlement Harrison had perpetuated for years. As they accessed the hospital, Jerome affected the haversack lightly. His grandmother had accomplished him that amends sometimes adapted patience. But aback the time was right, it was relentless, like a storm assuredly award its strength. It was as anybody was branch adjoin Emma's allowance that Jerome noticed article that fabricated him smile inwardly. Dr. Harrison was sweating, obsessively, blockage his watch and authoritative, that afraid action of adjusting his glasses that his grandmother had accomplished him to admit in doctors aback they knew they were about to be exposed. The accuracy was coming, and Harrison still had no abstraction of the blow that was about to demolish his anxiously complete apple of lies and apocryphal prestige. Aback they entered the concrete analysis allowance area. Emma was waiting. Jerome anxiously took his decrepit anthology out of his backpack. Dr. Harrison had no abstraction that those handwritten pages accommodate 3 weeks of authentic observations that were about to abort a 15-year career congenital on lies. "Dr. Foster," Jerome said, abutting the wheelchair area. Emma smiled aback. She saw him. "Can I appearance you article about your daughter?" Dr. Foster, austere man who had committed the aftermost years of his activity to aggravating to cure his daughter, nodded. "Of course, but be quick." Jerome knelt bottomward to Emma's acme and began an alternation of simple exercises, agilely effecting altered credibility on her legs and feet. To everyone's shock, Emma reacted immediately, effective her fingers and alike aggravating to angle her knees. "That's impossible," decrepit Dr. Harrison, diaphoresis alpha to anatomy on his forehead. "Emma has astringent bookish palsy. These reactions are aloof automatic spasms," Dr. Harrison Jerome said. Turning with that advancing calm, "Emma does not acquire astringent bookish palsy. She has neuromot break syndrome, actually altered and treatable condition." Dr. Chun watched Emma's reactions with fascination. "Jerome, how can you be so sure?" Jerome opened his anthology and began to read. November 1st, Emma responded to concrete stimuli on her lower extremities. Day 5, approved acquainted ascendancy of facial anatomy aback encouraged. Day 10, attempted to vocalize specific words aback appropriately stimulated. Dr. Foster angry pale. "You've been celebratory my babe, afterwards my permission. From the accessible sidewalks, sir, and what I saw were bright signs that her analysis has been amiss for 3 years." Dr. Harrison acquainted the apple collapse about him. "That's absurd. A 10-year-old adolescent analytic, a certified medical diagnosis." Jerome stood up and looked anon at Harrison. "Dr. Harrison, do you appetite me to acquaint Dr. Foster about the MRI scans that were misinterpreted in 2020? Or how you hid the after effects of acoustic tests that contradicted your antecedent diagnosis?" The blackout in the allowance was deafening. Dr. Foster boring angry to Harrison. "What is he talking about?" Harrison was visibly abashed now. "Michael, don't acquire to this kid. He's authoritative this up. My grandmother kept copies of all the important tests." Jerome connected relentlessly. "She was alive on the book aback. Emma's after effects came in. She showed me how to analyze the signs you chose to ignore." Jerome angry the folio of his anthology and apprehend MRI report, March 15, 2020. Fundamentally accustomed academician structures. Signs constant with balmy to abstinent neuromot break syndrome. Prognosis favorable with adapted stimulation. Dr. Foster snatched the anthology from Jerome's hands. His eyes scanned the authentic notes, anniversary ascertainment anachronous and detailed. "Harrison, is this true?" Dr. Harrison was cornered, and he knew it. "Michael, at the time there was ambiguity in the diagnosis." "Uncertainty?" Dr. Foster exploded. "You told me my babe would never walk, that I should acquire she would be abased forever. I was actuality cautious." "Cautious." Dr. Chun effective the anthology and advised the notes. "Jerome, these observations are abnormally accurate. You accurate acoustic acknowledgement patterns that acutely announce preserved motor function." Jerome approached Emma again. "Princess, do you appetite to try continuing up?" With his help, Emma was able to abutment her weight on her legs for a few seconds. It wasn't the abiding accomplish that would appear with able treatment, but it was conscious, controlled movement. Dr. Foster had tears in his eyes. 3 years, Harrison. 3 years of my daughter's activity that could acquire been different. "Michael, amused, let me explain." "Explain." Dr. Foster was acutely bent now. "You aria to me. You aria to Emma. You blanket years of her development for what? Abounding pride? For abhorrence of acceptance a mistake." Jerome bankrupt his anthology calmly. "Dr. Foster, with the adapted treatment, Emma can alive a actually accustomed life. Maybe with some limitations, but she can walk, run, comedy like any added child." Dr. Chun was visibly moved. "Jerome, will you advise me advance a able analysis plan for Emma?" It would be an honor, Doctor. Dr. Harrison fabricated one after most atrocious attempt. You can't booty a adolescent who lives on the streets seriously. Area are his credentials? His medical training. Jerome angry to him one after most time. Dr. Harrison, my grandmother consistently said that authentic ability doesn't appear from diplomas on the wall, but from 18-karat adulation for patients. Article you acutely forgot. Dr. Foster captivated Emma in his lap, watching her acknowledge absolutely to Jerome's stimuli. Harrison, you're fired. And you can be abiding that the medical lath will apprehend actually what happened here. Harrison staggered out of the room, his career destroyed not by a battling doctor or an academic investigation, but by a 10-year-old boy who cared added about an adolescent than he had any time cared about his own reputation. While Jerome formed patiently with Emma, assuming Dr. Chun the techniques his grandmother had accomplished him, a new absoluteness began to booty appearance in that hospital. A absoluteness area authentic anesthetic was accomplished not by those with the best degrees, but by those with the best heart. What no one knew yet was that Jerome captivated one after most abstruse about his grandmother. A abstruse that would transform not alone Emma's activity, but the abutting of hundreds of accouchement who would appear to that hospital in chase of hope. 6 months afterwards, that transformative day, Chicago Memorial Hospital was an actually altered place. Jerome Williams, now clearly adopted by the Foster family, had become the youngest advisor in the institution's history, a live ancillary by ancillary with Dr. Chun in the anew created administration of avant-garde pediatric neurorehabilitation. Emma ran through the hospital corridors, her abiding footsteps alveolate area. Already there had been alone the blackout of wheelchair wheels. At 8 years old, she not alone walked, she danced, jumped, and played like any added child. Added importantly, she had become an agent for affairs that had already helped dozens of accouchement with agnate misdiagnosis. Jerome! Jerome! Emma shouted, active adjoin her adoptive brother, who was analytical medical annal in the new allowance called Lily Williams Centermost for Neurorehabilitation. Dr. Chun said, we're allowance 3 added accouchement today. Jerome smiled, watching the babe who had been the agitator for a medical revolution. Princess, are you accessible to appearance them that miracles do appear aback there is authentic love? Dr. Foster watched the arena from the hallway, still confused by the afterimage of his babe running. The answerability over the absent years had been replaced by abysmal acknowledgement and a renewed purpose. He had acclimated his access to ensure that Jerome's affairs accustomed abounding allotment and civic recognition. As for Dr. Harrison, his abatement had been as amazing as his arrogance. Accursed for medical negligence, he absent his authorization afterwards an analysis appear added apprehensive cases. Today, he formed as a medical accessories salesman, absinthian irony for addition, who already advised himself untouchable. Dr. Jerome said Dr. Chun abutting with a folder. Bristles added cases acquire appear in of accouchement that added doctors said would never walk. Their parents Catholic from added states afterwards audition about our work. Jerome took the folder, his eyes animated with the aforementioned assurance he had apparent on that aboriginal day. We're activity to advice all of them, doctor. It was again that Dr. Chun appear article he had apparent in Lily Williams' claimed files. Jerome, did you apperceive that your grandmother larbored a BAFTA account with techniques she developed over 30 years? Techniques that were never clearly accurate because she knew the acceptable medical association wouldn't be accessible to acquire anarchistic methods. Jerome was bashful for a moment. She consistently said that authentic ability was article that was anesthetized from affection to heart, not from book to book. This journal, Dr. Chun continued, contains observations on over 200 cases of accouchement she secretly helped over the years. Cases the doctors had accustomed up on. But she healed application love, patience, and techniques she abstruse by celebratory the accouchement themselves. Dr. Foster abutting the conversation. Jerome, your grandmother, didn't aloof save Emma. She larbored a bequest that will save bags of children. At that moment, Emma ran up to Jerome and hugged him. Thank you for teaching me how to walk, brother. Jerome hugged her back, whispering, thank you for teaching me that sometimes the greatest miracles appear bearded as accouchement the apple gave up on too soon. Today, 3 years later, the Lily Williams Centermost is a civic baton in pediatric neurorehabilitation. Jerome, now 13, is belief anesthetic in adapted affairs for able students, but he never stops alive with the accouchement who appear to the center. Dr. Harrison continues to action to clean his career, But he has a parent that reputations destroyed by errors and ageism are abundant harder to adjustment than medical diagnosis. He absent not alone his job, but the assurance of an absolute association that apparent how it had underestimated the ability of accuracy in the easily of a bent child. Emma Foster, now 11, is believed to become a pediatrician. She wants to accord a back to all the accouchement who were already advised absent causes aloof like she was. Jerome abstruse that the greatest animus adjoin ageism is not acrimony or resentment, but the quiet success that transforms lives and proves that abundance has no color, amusing class, or age. He angry the abasement he suffered on his aboriginal day into ammunition for an anarchy that afflicted the lives of hundreds of families. The applique at the access to the Lily Williams centermost bears a byword that Jerome chose himself. Here, we acquire that every phenomenon begins a back addition refuses to accord up on a child. Dr. Chun consistently says to anyone who will listen. Jerome accomplished us that authentic anesthetic doesn't appear from diplomas blind on the wall, but from an affection that refuses to acquire that anyone is an absent cause. Acquire you any time been underestimated by addition who anticipation they knew aggregate about your abilities? Acquire you any time angry abasement into action to prove your worth? Leave your adventure of advantageous affliction in the comments. If this adventure of adventuresomeness and assurance affected your heart, don't balloon to subscribe to the approach for added belief that prove that authentic backbone knows no age, color, or amusing background, and that sometimes the greatest agents appear in the aboriginal packages. Is